Hello everyone. In the lecture of development of occlusion, we will be discussing about the eruption stages. Then after that, we will be discussing about the compact stage, the primary dentition, the mixed dentition, and the permanent dentition. So moving on to the learning outcomes, in this we will be discussing, as I have mentioned, about the chronology of eruption of primary and permanent dentition, teething, development of occlusion, the factors that influence the development of occlusion, and transient malocclusion. This lecture will be divided into two sections. In the first lecture, we will be discussing about the primary and the permanent dentition, and in the second part, we will be discussing about the transient malocclusions that are seen in primary, mixed, and permanent dentitions. Moving on to eruption. So eruption means to come out. So it's just not restricted to coming out of the bone, but also the various movement that occurs from the time it is that the initiation of the tooth development to the time the exfoliation. So it's a very complex process. It is defined by Masler and Shore as the movement of a tooth from its site of development within the alveolar bone to its functional position in the oral cavity. So the tooth eruption is divided into three phases, which is the pre-eruptive, eruptive, or the pre-functional, post-eruptive, which is the functional phase. So moving on to the phases of tooth eruption, that is pre-eruptive, eruptive, or post-eruptive phases. So in the pre-eruptive phase, we have the tooth germ which moves in the alveolar bone, that is within the alveolar bone, which is both bodily movement occurs and eccentric movement occurs. So during this phase, what happened? The growing tooth moves in various directions based on the growth of the jaw. So the tooth germ either moves bodily movement or eccentric movements. So what is bodily movement? Bodily movement is the shift of the entire tooth germ, which causes the resorption of the jaw in the direction of tooth movement, and there is bone apposition on the opposite direction or behind the tooth germ. So this movement occurs as the jaw grows. So next we have is the eccentric movement. Eccentric movement is the relative growth of the jaw compared to the other parts of the jaw. So the primary tooth movement that occurs are occlusally and facially, or in the direction of the face growth, as which I have mentioned already, that is the primary tooth or the tooth germ grows according to the movement of the or the growth of the jaws. Next we have the eruptive or the pre-functional phase. In the eruptive or the pre-functional, this phase starts from the time the start or the complete formation of the crown has occurred and the root formation begins. And this is an active phase where the tooth move towards the functional position. The functional position being the occlusion between the maxillary and the mandibular teeth. Next we have the post-eruptive or the functional phase. This phase is in which there is eruption which is at a slow rate to maintain the vertical dimension of the face and to compensate the attrition. So when the occlusal plane is reached or approached, there is a rapid phase of eruption that comes to an halt. So in the functional position, what is happening? There is a rapid phase of tooth eruption that is happening, but once the occlusion is obtained, the force of eruption halts, and then there is some amount of compensation that occurs because of attrition and bone remodeling that occurs. And also in this phase, what happens? As the jaw continues to grow, the teeth that needs to accommodate in the in the jaws, they also do some amount of remodeling, and remodeling takes place, which increases the height of the alveolar bone and also the thickness of the bone around the socket. So these movements are not only occur in the mesial direction, but they also compensate the interproximal wear that occurs. So this in details you will be learning in the textbook. Yeah. So next we move on to the chronology of tooth eruption. So this help us to determine the dental age and identification of the teeth. It also helps in the identification of any dental anomalies. Dental anomalies being if there is a tooth which is missing compared to the age the patient is in. The age of occurrence is it also determines the age of occurrence of the tooth, and planning and preventive and interceptive procedures. So if you know the chronology of the dentition, and based on that you can plan a preventive or interceptive procedure. So the chronology of primary dentition is for the maxillary and the mandibular teeth. So the central incisor is erupts at the time of 10 months. Then you have the lateral incisor. So this all you have to basically read and remember which teeth erupts at what age and the root formation is completed by what year. So generally once the tooth erupts, it takes around a year for the root formation to occur. So this table is for the primary dentition. So another chronology or date of eruption which is given by Logan and Cronfield is the central incisors for the maxillary teeth is 6 months, and mandibular teeth is 6 months, maxillary 7.5, lateral incisor is maxillary 9 months and mandibular is 7 months. Canine we have maxillary which is 18 months and mandibular teeth which is 16 months. The first molars erupts at the age of 14 months for the maxillary and 12 months for the mandibular, and the second molar which erupts at the age of 24 months for the maxillary and 20 months for the mandibular teeth. So this is a sequence of eruption of tooth, that is first the mandibular central incisors erupt, then you have the maxillary central incisors and lateral incisors that erupts, then you have the mandibular lateral incisors, maxillary first molars, mandibular first molars, maxillary canine, then you have the mandibular canine and mandibular second molars, and the last tooth is the maxillary second molar. So this is the chronology of the permanent dentition. So this again you have to remember the eruption dates and approximate when was the root completed. So root completion in permanent dentition takes about 2 to 3 years for it to occur. So moving on to teething. What is teething? So teething is the eruption of the primary teeth. So the signs and symptoms that you notice in a child with teething are there's increased salivation, there's drooling of saliva that is seen, there's increased finger sucking, the child becomes restless, there's loss of appetite, and also which is associated with fever, diarrhea and pain due to inflammation of the tissues. So how do we manage a child with teething and associated symptoms? So a child with teething is generally associated with, as I've already discussed, with pain, diarrhea and lot of salivation. So the pain of the gums can be managed by giving teething toys or silicone rings, which are as I've said silicone based, and along with that pacifiers can be used. A hard non-sweetened rusk can be given to the child. Analgesics in the form of topical or systemic can be given. Topical like local anesthetic can be applied on the tooth surface or the gums to prevent it from to relieve the pain, and the fever can be managed by antipyretics, or if the child is having severe symptoms, then the child needs to be referred to the pediatrician or the pediatric dentist. So the development of dentition, the development of dentition is an integral part for the development. So our dentition plays an important role for the growth of the craniofacial growth, and along with that the structure of the body. So it is interrelated with each other. The tooth is derived from the ectoderm and the mesoderm, and the first indication of tooth formation is seen at 6 weeks of intrauterine life. So the first formation of teeth starts when the child is intrauterine already. So at the 6th week of intrauterine life, the first tooth starts the initiation. So the life cycle of the tooth is initiation, then it moves on to proliferation, histodifferentiation, morphodifferentiation, and apposition. So this all will be dealt in your further other lectures, so we will not be discussing much about them. So moving on to the development of occlusion. So what is occlusion, or occlusio as we say? It's a relationship between all the components of the masticatory system. Masticatory system is your maxilla, mandible, your muscles, your teeth. So it is a relationship between all the components of the masticatory system, which is in normal function, dysfunction, or a parafunction. So what is the ideal occlusion? The ideal occlusion is when there is perfect interdigitation between the maxillary and the mandibular teeth, which results in the developmental process which consists of the cranial base, the jaw growth, and the tooth eruption. So in the ideal occlusion, what happens? There's good interdigitation, or the perfect interdigitation between the maxillary mandibular teeth. Along with that, there is a development of the craniofacial base, the jaw growth also occurs, and there is also tooth eruption that occurs. So next we moving on to the occlusal development. So in the occlusal development, we have the 4 phases, that is the predentate stage, the deciduous dentition, mixed dentition, and the permanent dentition. So the predentate, the term itself indicates that is before the development of the tooth, that is in the gum pad stage, which is seen from 0 to 6 months after birth. The deciduous dentition is from 6 months, that is the first primary tooth erupts, to the time when before the eruption of the first permanent tooth. The mixed dentition is from the first permanent tooth erupts till the time there is a combination of primary and the combination of the deciduous dentition along with the permanent tooth. And the permanent dentition is from 12 years onwards, when the oral cavity has only the permanent dentition and not the deciduous dentition. So in the predentate stage, which lasts from birth, that is 0 to 6 months of age, in this stage it extends as I have told, that is the birth to the first primary tooth that erupts into the oral cavity. And at this stage there are no teeth which are seen. Clinically, the infant is edentulous. So in the edentulous stage, that means there is no teeth is present in the oral cavity of a child. So in this stage, what do we see? That is in the predentate stage, we see firm pink colored and dense fibrous periosteum which is seen. The maxillary gum pad is horseshoe shaped, while the mandibular is U shaped, and both these jaws undergo rapid growth. So during when the child is born till the time that first tooth erupts, there is rapid growth that is occurring in a child. So the growth occurs not only in one plane but three planes. That is, growth occurs in the downward motion, the forward motion and lateral motion. So downward motion, that means the jaw grows vertically. Forward is there's increase in the forward growth of the jaws, and laterally, that is a sideways growth of the jaws. So forward growth for the mandible is greater. So among all the three planes in which the jaw growth occurs, the forward growth for the mandible is the greater compared to the downward and lateral growth. So the greater anterior posterior, that is the forward growth dimension of the gum pads, greater the possibility of the child developing malocclusion. So if there is a greater growth, anterior posterior growth means the forward growth of the maxilla or the mandible. So the greater dimension, anterior posterior growth of the gum pads, there are chances of developing malocclusion. So malocclusion, like a class 3 development or a class 2 development, based on which jaw growth occurs more. So if it is the maxillary grows more than the mandible, then either it may be a normal occlusion or it is class 2 occlusion that will occur, or if the mandibular grows more, then it is a class 3 growth that occurs. So here in this picture you have the gum pads. This is the maxillary gum pad. So as the gum pads develop, so they develop into the labiobuccal portion, the lingual portion, and which are separated by dental grooves. So the labiobuccal, so that means the labial surface. So the labial surface is this one. That is the first portion. Then you have the lingual portion. So the lingual portion is the palatal surface, towards the palatal surface, which develops later, and these two are separated by the dental grooves. So the gingival groove, what we see here in these areas here, are divided into 10 segments by the transverse grooves. So you have the gingival grooves which are divided by the transverse grooves. So the segments which divide, they are called as the transverse grooves. So each contain one developing sac. So the developing tooth sac means there is a tooth which is developing already but within the jaw. So the gingival grooves separate the gum pads from the palate and the floor of the mouth. The transverse groove between C and D is called as the lateral sulcus. So the transverse groove here, as you see, is the lateral sulcus, same as in the maxillary also. This is called as the lateral sulcus. So this is your labiobuccal portion, this is your lingual portion, same for the mandibular also, labiobuccal portion. Then you have the lingual portion which is separated by the dental grooves, and there are transverse grooves which are separating each developing tooth sac. And the last, which is the lateral sulcus, is in the C and D, that is the canine and the first molar region. So we have a lateral sulcus which helps in predicting the inter-arch space at a very early stage. So normally the lateral sulcus of the mandible, here the lateral sulcus for the maxilla is, these two are the gum pads in a closed position. This is a cross section, the longitudinal section of the jaw which can be seen, in which this is the maxillary gum pad, this is the mandibular gum pad, and this is an occlusion, that is the maxillary and the mandibular gum pads are occluding. So the lateral sulcus predicts the inter-arch relationship at a very early stage. So normally the lateral sulcus of the maxilla is placed ahead of the mandibular lateral sulcus, that is the mandibular lateral sulcus is placed distally. The upper gum pads are wider and they are longer and there is complete overjet all around. So in the gum pad stage, what happens, there is the upper, that is the maxillary gum pads are wider and longer than the mandibular gum pads, but this difference between the maxillary and the mandibular gum pads is corrected with the growth of the jaws, which occurs with age of the child and the development of the teeth. So the only contact that occurs during when the patient or the child is biting, once the child and the patient is biting, is when the first molar area they are contacting, in the first molar area where they are contacting. So what do we see here is a spacing between the maxillary and the mandibular gum pad, which and this space actually helps in suckling often during feeding, and this is also called as infantile anterior open bite. The difference between the maxillary and mandibular jaws is corrected after the rapid growth of the gum pad, which is during the first year of life, and it is more in the transverse and labiolingual direction, and the segments become more prominent with growth. So there's with growth, what happens during the first year of life, there's growth of the maxillary and the mandibular jaws anteriorly. So the next we would be learning about what is precociously erupted teeth. So generally we know, according to the chronology of tooth eruption, that the tooth erupts at the time at 6 months of age, but we do see teeth that has erupted at the time of birth or the first month of birth. So the tooth that are present at birth are called as natal teeth, while the teeth that appear during the first month of life are called as neonatal teeth. So the teeth that are more commonly seen is mandibular incisors, which is approximately 85% among all the teeth, and the reason why these teeth are precociously erupted, that is they erupt before the time their time of eruption, is because either it is because of the superficial position of the tooth germ, that means the tooth germ is superficially placed in the jaws, or either it might be the reason because of the increased rate of eruption of the tooth. So again this causes the precocious eruption of the primary teeth. These are associated with syndromes like the Riga-Fede syndrome, which you see sublingual ulceration. So as you see in this picture, the child has tooth, that is the incisors, mandibular incisors are present, and there is an ulcer on the sublingual surface of the tongue. So this ulceration is because of the continuous irritation from the mandibular teeth while suckling. So what is the treatment for such teeth that has precociously erupted and causing ulceration, and it is extraction, but extraction is done if there are chances of aspiration or fear of aspiration is there, because these primary teeth are usually superficially placed, and they are not the roots have also not formed, so they are they are not firmly placed in the jaws, they are very loose. So even a small knock on the tooth will cause the aspiration of the tooth. So to avoid that, extraction of the tooth is done. This also causes difficulty while feeding, especially for the mothers and also for the child, because it causes ulceration for the child and for the mother also. And there is laceration of the tongue. So this laceration, again, if there is this again will cause difficulty in feeding, so the treatment option would be extraction. So now moving on to the primary dentition stage. We have already done with the pre-dentate stage. Now is the primary dentition. So in the primary dentition, it's from 6 months to 6 years of age before the eruption of the permanent tooth. So as you can see in this picture, you have, this is the primary tooth, but you have the permanent tooth which is also there in the jaws. Okay, so after an age, that is, first is your from 6.5, once the tooth erupts, this will cause some amount of desorption of the roots of the primary teeth, and there will be exfoliation of the primary teeth, and the permanent tooth will be erupting. So in the primary dentition stage, or the deciduous dentition stage, that is as it is called, which is seen from 6 months to around 6 years of age until your permanent first molar erupts. So in this, what are the characteristics? What do we see? So there is in a primary teeth, there is either you see spacing between the teeth, or there is no spacing. So either it is a spaced dentition or a non-spaced dentition. So what is a spaced dentition? That means space is available between each teeth, while a non-spaced dentition is there is no space between each tooth. Okay, so there is no sagittal or transverse dimension alteration, only vertical changes are seen. So during this primary dentition, there is only vertical growth that is seen, but no sagittal or anterior, posterior, or in the lateral directions. Only changes that are seen in the vertical dimension of the child, which increases because with the eruption of the primary teeth. So the distal surface of the maxillary and mandibular second primary molar maintains the vertical relation. So the distal surface of the primary second molar, that is maxillary or mandibular, they maintain a vertical relationship between the maxillary and the mandibular teeth. So as I have already told you, there is two types of dentition that we see, that is the primary, the spaced dentition and the non-spaced dentition. So in this picture, as you can see, there is spaces which are seen between each tooth, between two teeth which are available. So these spaces are either called as physiological spacing or primate spacing. So what is physiological spacing? Physiological spacing is the one which is utilized for the adjustment of the permanent successors. So physiological spacing are the ones which are seen spaces between each teeth. So those are the ones which are adjusted once the permanent tooth erupts. So these spaces are utilized by the permanent teeth. So why and how it is utilized? Because the primary teeth is smaller compared to the permanent teeth. So once a permanent teeth erupts, they are larger. So these spaces, or which were there initially, is used up by the permanent tooth. So in the maxillary arch, we see around 0 to 8 mm, while in the mandibular arch it is around 1 to 7 mm. So if absence of spacing may cause crowding in the permanent dentition. So the spacing that you see is natural and ideal. Actually, it should, a dentition should be spaced for the permanent successor to be to erupt without any crowding in the permanent dentition. But if there is no spacing, there are chances of crowding to occur in the permanent dentition. So now we'll discuss about the primate spaces. So first was the physiological spaces. These spaces are seen adjacent to each tooth, while the primate space or the simian space or the anthropoid space, as they called, are, so they are called by all these three names, which occur mesial, here in this picture, mesial to the maxillary canine, distal to the mandibular canine. The primate spaces or the simian spaces are found mesial to the maxillary and distal to the mandibular canine. which occurs in about 50% of the children. So we have discussed about the spaced dentition. Now talking about the non-spaced dentition. So in non-spaced dentition, there is no spaces. The maxillary or the mandibular arches are narrow, or their teeth will be larger than the normal tooth. So this indicates there will be crowding in the permanent dentition depending upon the jaw growth. So again, you cannot guarantee that a jaw with a non-spaced dentition will have crowding. So if the jaw growth occurs more in these children with non-spaced dentition, then the permanent dentition will be accommodated and there will be no crowding. So in this picture, if you see, this child has no spaces between the teeth. So this comparing to what we have seen in the previous picture, there was space between each tooth. So moving on to the occlusal relationship, as we have in the permanent dentition, the occlusal relationship is similar. We have something like that in the primary dentition also. So this dentition is completed, the primary dentition is completed after the eruption of the primary second molars, and this indicates the eruption of the permanent first molars. How? Because the permanent first molars are going to erupt distal to the primary second molars. Therefore, the primary second molars are the key factors that influence the development of the future occlusion of the permanent dentition. That means whatever is your occlusion in the primary dentition, the primary second molar is the one which decides, and the permanent first molar just follows your primary dentition. This classification, the definition of occlusion relationship or the occlusion relationship was given by Bohm in the year 1950. So this primary second molar relationship is described in terms of the terminal plane. So in the permanent dentition, it is based on angle, like in angles class 1 molar and class 2 molar or class 3 molar relationship. It is based on the mesobuccal cusp, and while in the primary dentition, it is the classification is based on the terminal planes of the primary second molar. So we have three different planes: the flush terminal, the mesial step, and the distal terminal plane. So what is the flush terminal? So in this picture, what you see, you have the primary canine, the primary first molar, the primary second molar, same in the mandibular also. Okay, so the distal surface, if you see, so this classification is based on the distal surface. So this is called as the terminal plane, which is the flush terminal plane is actually seen in 74% of the population. So the distal surface of the upper molar and the distal surface of the lower second molar are in the same plane, that is in a straight line. So it is called as the flush terminal. So it is a favorable relationship which guides the permanent tooth to erupt into a class 1 molar relationship. So here 6 is what you see is the one which is the permanent first molar which is erupting, going to erupt later. So the distal step, so the terminal plane decides the occlusion in the permanent dentition. So if the distal surface of the upper and the lower teeth are in a same straight line. Next we have the mesial step, which is seen in 14% of the population. So again we consider the distal plane of the second molar of both the maxillary and the mandibular primary teeth. Here is the permanent first molars which is still not erupted, So in this, how do you classify or define the mesial step of the lower molar? If you see, the mesial step of the lower molar is mesial towards the mesial surface to that of the upper molar. See, in this case you don't have a straight plane, that is, the terminal planes are not in a straight line. The mandibular teeth is slightly ahead of the maxillary teeth. So by this, what we say, the distal surface of the lower second molar is mesial to the distal surface of the upper second molar. So this is called as the mesial step. So mesial step is a favorable guide to the development of the permanent molar into a class 1 relationship. Next, we have the distal step, which is seen in around 10% of the population, in which again you check for the second molar of the maxillary and the mandibular primary teeth. Here you see the mandibular teeth is distal to the maxillary primary second molar. So the distal surface of the lower second molar is more distal to the distal surface of the upper second molar. So it is unfavorable type of occlusion, as it guides the permanent molar into a distal occlusion and hence into a class 2 relationship. So the distal step is when the lower second molar is distal to the maxillary second molar. Here this picture, all these three pictures define the three different terminal planes we have discussed. So if you see here, you have the molars. This is the canine, the first molar, the second molar. So they are in the same plane. So it is called as the flush terminal. So when the teeth, here the primary molar, second molar, is mesial to that of the primary distal surface of the primary second molar. So it is the mesial step. And in this picture, if you see, the distal surface of the lower second molar is distal to the distal surface of the maxillary second molar. So it is a distal step. So how do we determine if a distal step, mesial step, or a flush terminal is favorable, and to what occlusion it is going to create for the permanent molar, permanent first molar? So a distal step in the primary teeth, based on the growth, how it occurs. If the distal step, if there is minimum growth that occurs, then it is class 2. If there is shift of only teeth that occurs, there is no growth of jaws, then end to end relationship. And if there is forward growth of the mandible, then again it will cause end to end. Distal step means there is forward growth of the maxillary jaws only. So in this, that will cause class 2 molar relationship, or it depends. If there is minimum growth of the jaws, then class 2. If forward growth of the mandible that occurs, then it is end to end, or if this shift also, it causes end to end. But if it is a flush terminal, that means same vertical plane. If there is minimum growth, then they are end to end molar relationship in the permanent tooth. If there is shift of teeth, then class 1 occlusion will occur, or if there is minimum growth of the mandible also, class 1 will occur. In the mesial step, where the mandibular molar, second molar, is placed mesial to the maxillary second molar, in which if there is minimal growth, what will happen? Class 1 molar relationship. If there is forward growth of the mandible or shift of teeth, then it is class 3 molar relationship that may occur. So moving on to the anterior teeth relationship is the overjet and the overbite we will be discussing. So what is overbite? Overbite is the vertical overlap that you see here. So it is the vertical distance which the incisal edge of the maxillary incisors overlap vertically past the incisal edge of the mandibular incisors. So the average overbite in the primary dentition is 2 mm. So next is the overjet. So overjet is the horizontal overlap. The average overjet is 4 mm with a normal range of around 2 to 6 mm in 4 years. So with attrition, what happens? The mandibular and with attrition and mandibular growth, the overjet at 5 years decreases and become edge to edge. And with excessive wear of the maxillary canines and molars, the whole lower dental arch may become more anteriorly and the incisors may assume an edge to edge interrelationship by the age of 6. So if there is excessive wear of the primary teeth and the canines, so the whole lower dental arch may become anteriorly, a little more anteriorly, and instead of the overlap which was there, now it may become edge to edge in a relation by the age of 6. But this over edge to edge relationship will be changed after the eruption of the permanent tooth, which erupts a little more labially. So next is the canine relationship. So canine relationship, we have class 1, class 2 and class 3. Class 1, when the mandibular canine interdigitates in the embrasure between the maxillary lateral incisor and canine. So you have the mandibular lateral incisors and canines, and the maxillary canine is interdigitating in the embrasure area between the two teeth. Class 2 is when the mandibular canine interdigitates distal to the embrasure between the maxillary and the lateral incisor and canine. So mandibular canine interdigitates distal to the maxillary lateral incisor and canine. Class 3 is when the mandibular canine interdigitates in any other relation to the class 1 and class 2 what we have read. Moving on to the exfoliation of primary teeth. So how does that occur? So the exfoliation of primary teeth is not a single process, it is a multifactorial process. So the exfoliation occurs not only because of the eruption of the permanent tooth, because of the pressure from the permanent tooth, what happens is resorption of the bone that the tooth that occurs, and this helps at the end. What happens, the root is completely resorbed, you just have the crown structure which is still intact, or sometimes the permanent tooth pushes the primary tooth out of the socket. So when the permanent tooth begins to erupt, it is aberrantly, which is guided by the gubernacular canals. So the pathway for the erupting of the anterior teeth, so you know that there is the permanent teeth, when they are erupting, they erupt slightly more, they erupt lingual to that of the primary teeth. So that means when the permanent teeth are erupting, permanent anterior teeth, they erupt lingual to that of the primary anterior teeth. So the pathway of erupting anterior teeth is essentially lingual to their predecessors, that is the primary teeth, resulting in an oblique lingual pattern of resorption. So there will be lingual resorption pattern which will be seen because of the erupting force from the permanent and anterior teeth. So the resorption is not a continuous process, it is a rather alternating process. So there will be some amount of destruction, and along with that there will be bone deposition which will be happening. So as the tooth is resorbing, there will be bone, that is called bone the bone destruction. Apposition is is the bone deposition in place of the tooth which was previously available. Thank you. So in this lecture we have discussed about the predentate, primary dentate. In the next lecture we will be discussing about the mixed dentition and the permanent dentition, and along with that we have the various anomalies, transient malocclusions that are seen, that we will be dealing with in the next lecture. Thank you.